Hey everyone, before we jump into the show, I just wanted to let you know that the fall season of the Productivity in Tech podcast is going to be starting on September the 11th. And in that time, the biggest change that we're going to have with that is we are going to switch back to the weekly interviews. We've actually gotten our entire guest list planned out. So be prepared for a lot of great interviews every single week. I want to thank you for allowing us to switch to a bi-weekly format during the summer. That allowed me to spend time with my family. That allowed me to also help with the planning and coordinating of guests. That way they didn't feel as rushed to be on the show. And it made for a lot of great shows. In fact, I've gotten a lot of great comments about the shows that we put out in the summer. But now that kids are going back to school and we are getting ready to ramp up with Productivity in Tech, I just wanted to cut in and let you know that we're going to continue the schedule until September 11th. So this will be the last episode of the summer season. We'll take a week off. And then after that, we will jump into our new weekly format, or resuming our weekly format from there. And if you want to keep up with these and more announcements in Productivity in Tech, then be sure to head over to productivityintech.com. We got blog posts out there where we announce a few things. And also, if you want to jump into the community, you can do so there by clicking on the premium button or going to productivityintech.com/join. But just wanted to let you know about that stuff. And without further ado, let's jump into the show. What's up, everybody? Jay Miller here, bringing another Productivity in Tech podcast. And this week, I have someone that I just met recently, probably in the last few months. Everyone, please say hello to Aleen. Aleen, how are you doing today?
I am well. How are you, Jay?
I'm pretty good. Aleen does so many things. She's starting her own bullet journaling revolution via Twitter and Instagram. She is also one of the heads over at App Camp for Girls, a really awesome camp that just wrapped up. Am I correct with that?
Summer season is done.
Awesome. And then she also runs App Launch Map, which helps all of these startups and developers, the people that are putting the apps in the App Store, handle all of the things that don't involve the App Store. And I'm sure that's really important. Aleen, please fill in the blanks and tell everyone about those things and the millions of other things that you're doing.
I can't keep track of them all anymore. All right. So wait, I don't know. Where should I start? Because that's three pretty big things.
I'll let you run wherever you want to go with those.
Okay. Well, so let's go. Let's work backwards. Let's start with App Launch Map, which is the business that I launched a couple of months ago, and I help, as you said, small and independent developers deal with the business of launching an app, the non-code business of launching an app. So, and right now, just in the Apple ecosystem, so Mac and iOS, I'm just not familiar with what's going on in the Windows and Android worlds right now. So eventually I would like to be able to help with those, but I'm not at that point right now. So basically what I do is I help with, what does your web page look like? What is your content on your web page? Are you telling people enough? Are they getting the information they need? Their App Store product page, what does that look like? Does that give people information they need? Is it compelling? Is it boring? Can I tell what the app does? Do you have a video? I can make you a video. What are your screenshots like? Do they, are they compelling? Do they tell a story? Have you composed your first tweet announcing the launch or, update to your app? All of these types of things, press outreach, putting a press kit together, deciding what the marketing message is. Those are the types of things that I do.
So I feel like that would actually work with podcasting as well, because as you said, as you started naming off some of those things, I'm just like, did I do that? So
I think it does have a lot of technical implications or any kind of like, I mean, it's content strategy, right? It's how to sell what you are producing. And I'm definitely not a marketer. I'm definitely kind of a strategist. I'm more about like getting you where you need to be than I am, actually doing it. Although I do that and I do it well, I'm really more about like helping people figure out what they need to do.
nice. So we've got app launch map, and I forgot a few things. Let's talk about originality because
Okay.
that is like one of my favorite shows now.
Oh, thank you.
There are so many great guests, except for that person on episode number 5. We'll ignore that one.
Oh,
But
no, we'll be talking about episode number 5.
okay. Actually, we'll have to because
Uh-huh.
that was when you had me on the line
Mhm.
and we talked about bullet journaling. But
Mhm.
before we get into the bullet journaling revolution that you're starting, tell everyone a little bit more about Originality.
So Originality is a show where I and my co-host, who is a science fiction writer, Kay Tempest Bradford, we talk about creation and creativity. Originally, the concept was, where do ideas come from? And we were trying to come up with podcast names that kind of referenced that. At one point, I was literally like, we'll call it Where Do Ideas Come From? And it's kind of, I think that's still the heart of the show, but it's talking to creative people about their processes or their creations. It's talking about like productivity hacks like bullet journaling. Really the business of being creative. And Tempest and I frame it a lot in the writers' worlds because we are both writers in different ways. I'm more on the technical side, and she's definitely she has been a tech journalist, but now she's more on the science fiction fantasy side of things. So we do frame it through that lens, but hopefully in the pretty near future, I'm going to have, some app developers on. We've talked to you about bullet journaling, which isn't necessarily about writing. So that's really what it is, because I feel like one of the things that I try to do is tell people that they are creative. I believe that human beings are inherently creative. And I don't think we learn how to stay in touch with our creativity. That sounds like way more like hippy dippy metaphysical type stuff than I really believe. But I feel like, we all really want to be creative in some way. I really think that's fundamental to humanity. And how do we do that in a way that feels satisfying to us? With minimal frustration. Creativity has frustration kind of inherent, but how do we do that without going mad, I guess?
Well, I would definitely say that resonates a lot with what productivity in tech is all about, really, because if you go through any of the 60 some odd episodes we've done, a lot of them will end around the lines of me saying something along the lines of, we believe that everyone here can be productive. And that creativity actually inspires productivity in a way. It's not a matter of, do I need to follow this system to the letter? Do I need to implement, agile, workflows, or do I need to do all of these
Ah,
things? Absolutely.
mhm.
It's how can I be creative and use these frameworks, because that's what they are, they're a framework, and then add my own sense of personality to it to make it something that I not only can do effectively, but I enjoy doing at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, because if you're beating your head against the tools and not actually getting things done, you're in trouble, right? You've got to find something that you can modify to work with, your brain and your processes. There are a lot of tools that I just do not understand. Trello, people sing Trello's praises, Trello in my brain, it's just like someone speaking at me in an alien language when I look at that. It just does not make sense with the way I think, the way I process things, the way I organize things. It's just not compatible with Trello. But my friends, they thrive. They use Trello and they do it beautifully, and it helps them get so much done. And I'm so glad for them that they have that.
I'm jealous of those people that are able to do that because I get like Pinterest envy with a lot of things, and I want to segue that into one of the biggest things that I get really bad, like Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, like every social media network envy out there, and that is bullet journaling. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you've ever followed anyone in the bullet journaling community that has like over 10,000 followers on Instagram, you are probably angry with them at some point because their spreads just look amazing and mine just don't.
Yeah. Well, and that was really intimidating to me. And that's part of what you really helped me with when you came on episode number 5 of Originality. Um, is I have followed these people on Instagram. I'm kind of like the handwriting inspiration person. Like I look at all of these hand lettered beautiful things. I have, a couple of posters on my walls. I really, really love it. And so that's really kind of how I got, like, I knew about bullet journaling before, but it was really like I started following like calligraphers on Instagram, and I started following like hand lettering artists on Instagram. And then bullet journals started coming up, and these beautiful, artistic, well written, textbook calligraphy journals. And I was looking at it for the handwriting just because I'm like a pen geek and an ink geek and a paper geek and a handwriting geek, even though I haven't actually practiced any of this stuff. And then started seeing bullet journal spreads come up. And then I was like, I can't do this because I don't have these abilities. Like I am not artistic in that way. And so I thought about bullet journaling for probably 2 years before I actually tried it.
You know what's funny about bullet journaling though is, I mean, Carol Ryder, the creator of the fundamental system behind bullet journaling, if you watch his videos and you look at the spreads that he creates, they're very, very plain. Like there's
They
no
are.
design or anything to them. But at the same time, people were just like, "Oh, I'm gonna make this look pretty," and that's where a lot of these things that a lot of developers deal with, fear of missing out. Oh, if I don't do it like this, then I'm missing out on something. Or my favorite, imposter syndrome, because a lot of people now since that episode have come to me and said, "Hey, you're the bullet journaling person." I'm like, uh,
Congratulations.
I guess. I don't know. I never claimed to be, but I guess. So I definitely think that a lot of people are afraid to jump into bullet journaling, but like I said on Originality, we'll say episode 5 like 17 times, and then
Mhm.
we'll never say it again. But yeah, on episode 5 of Originality, fail fast and fail often, because you start learning what works for you only through the failures, not through the successes.
Yeah, very, very much so. And I'm like, as we're talking about this, I feel the need to disclaim, like, I've only been doing this since, episode 5 of Originality. I don't remember what episode I just posted. It was like episode 8. So I've been doing this for about 6 weeks. We do Originality every other week. So it's not something that I'm super steeped in, but that fail fast and fail often, you know, clip or tidbit that you gave is something that I feel like a lot of us need to take to heart. I definitely need to take to heart. And I applied that to my bullet journal. So I kind of went to counter to another bit of your advice, which was to kind of invest in tools, so that I felt like it was something to come back to. So, buying a fairly nice notebook and maybe buying an excuse to buy another nice pen or, stuff like that. I chose the other route because I've already invested money in stationery and pens because that's what I do. And instead I went with, I think I have a partially used field notes, and, I have pens I like that I know will work with it. let's just throw it together and see what happens. And because I used an unremarkable field notes, and for those of you who don't use field notes, they have like quarterly offerings, but they also have kind of like a standard inventory. And in my household, we get kind of the special things, and those are like sacrosanct. But I just got like a regular brown standard grid field notes and started scribbling in it and started crossing things out and started like quickly realizing, oh, I don't like the grid. I need a dot grid. I don't like the grid. Oh, this way of doing it isn't working for me. Oh, I need to do, this other thing instead of, I was keeping separate lists for things and that wasn't working out, at least at that point in time. I needed to have everything on one page. And those kinds of things, I just gave myself permission because it was like the field notes isn't special. I have 12 of them and it was already a little beat up. And so now I'm going to go play because I am also one of those people, and I hear this from creative people who I collect journals, I collect paper, I collect these beautiful artistic, things. And I'm going to write in them when I have the perfect thing to write. And part of what I needed to do was get over that mentality to be able to bullet journal. So I went with, standard issue stuff I already had and gave myself permission to kind of mess it up a lot.
I love that idea of just getting over that mentality. And I really agree, but I agree on such a higher level than just analog productivity or task management. I mean, anything that you're doing, you're going to probably not be the best at starting out. Like, I find it funny. I tell people I'm an avid bowler. Like, that's something that I do every week is I go bowling. I'm in a bowling league. And people will, even though my average isn't like the highest in the world, people will compliment like, hey, you have really good form. And it's like, well, thank you. I've only been bowling for 20 years now. So I hope something out of this is good. And I remember starting out like just as a kid, seeing people like throw it really hard and curving the ball really hard. And I didn't have the power to do that. And just thinking like, wow, I suck at this. I'm never going to be good at this. Why can't I be like that person that can make the ball go from like one side of the lane to the other? And I'm like, now I'm a lot older, a lot stronger. I'm able to do those things. But I sat there last week with my wife and there was a couple next to us and they had their sons with them. And their son was basically throwing the same fit that I was throwing when I was his age. And I sat there and like, I said, hey, can I talk to your son really quick? And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Like, I knew the person. I said, hey, I used to be just like you. I used to not be able to throw the ball that hard. I used to not be able to do the things that I wanted to do, but I stuck with it and I kept doing it and I started learning what works for me. And eventually I was able to do what I wanted to do, but in my own way. And I think there are so many people that they either give up too early or they give up because they don't feel like they'll ever get to that point. And it takes time.
It does, or they don't even start. I think that's a big thing so before Originality, I had a podcast that ran for 100 episodes. It was called Less Than or Equal, and it's a good podcast. So if people want to listen to that, you can go to relay.fm/LTOE and listen to that because it's 100 episodes of me talking to people about what they love, like kind of similar to this, but it was more broad. So I talked to cheerleaders and I talked to other podcasters and I talked to Magic the Gathering players. And when I started, I was like, I'm going to start and it's going to be perfect. And that's going to be it, And of course, that's not what happened. I got so much better at talking to people over time. I upgraded my equipment. I upgraded my software. I became better at scheduling things. I became better at explaining things. And, if I don't know, like there are a lot of things in my life that I have not done. I've had the idea, and unlike Less Than or Equal, I didn't execute it because it wasn't perfect. And I think that's a huge problem for a lot of people too.
And I also think that's why, you talked about starting early even let's talk about one of your other projects that just wrapped up, App Camp for Girls.
Mm-hmm.
I am so in love with that idea. I'm so in love with the idea of, hey, let's take people that let's be honest, there are less inspiring figures in their personal lives in the tech and STEM area, and let's just surround them with people like them. Let's surround them with people that want to learn, that want to become better, and let's surround them with people that are actually doing the things that they want to do, and show them that, one, it's fun, and then two, that it's possible. I didn't grow up in an area where tech was, the focus. I actually got the opportunity to move when I went to high school, and I went to a school that focused on engineering, and I was like, I'm just going to be an engineer because this is apparently the best thing that you can do in this area. And I got to college, took a hardware engineering course, and was like, I absolutely hate this. I do not want to do this at all. I dropped out of college, and through the military, I wound up in California. And it wasn't until I got to California that I got caught up with like Code Newbie and a lot of other smaller online groups that were like, hey, if computer engineering isn't your thing, look at like software development. That could be fun. And now it's been like 5 years of me just programming and doing these little things and falling in love with it and combining my interests. Like, I would be so amazed to see if some of these young women that are a part of, well, I shouldn't say young women, these young people in general that are in App Camp for Girls, that like they can not only learn how to do things with tech and do things in the STEM space, but they can combine them with the things that are fascinating to them right now.
Yeah, and that's something that we really try to drive home. So let me explain. For people who aren't familiar, App Camp for Girls is a 5-day summer camp, and it's a day camp. I would not do it if we kept the kids overnight. It's just not a thing I'd be willing to take on. But it's a 5-day camp where girls, non-binary kids, and transgender kids of any gender are welcome to come in, and we go through a software development cycle. And it's very, like abbreviated. They work off of code banks, which are like we type out snippets of code, and basically they need to figure out in what order to put it in order to get the stuff running. But they have to learn logic. They have to figure out how to read the code. It's not like this is what the code does. No, they have to sit down and figure that out, and then they have to put it in order. They have to type it. They have to debug it. But really, the first thing Monday morning, the first thing we do is we talk about big ideas, and we talk about where. So it's iPhone apps are what we're doing currently. We might, later move on to Android development as well, or whatever. But right now, it's iOS only. And we talk about, where do ideas come from? What are you passionate about? What are some pain points with that? What could be made better with technology? What do you think you could do? They design, as the week goes on, they come up with their logo. We split them into teams. They come up with a logo. They come up with an app icon. They create, for the apps they make, again, in these 5 days, they create their own artwork. So all of their assets they do. They determine the UI. They determine the UX. Where are the buttons placed? What colors do they use? All of that stuff is stuff that they do. And we have volunteers from a variety of backgrounds. Like, I am a UX writer, a content strategist. I don't know Swift. I know enough that I can read it and kind of help walk them through the logic of it. But I have not written an app. That's, on my list of eventually, something that I definitely want to do. We have in Phoenix Camp, one of the co-organizers is a professor at Arizona State University. She comes in, she talks about content strategy, presentation skills, because they also have to pitch these apps that they create. We have had, until she went to work for Google, another co-organizer is a UX expert. We have one who is a Swift developer. We have, and so we have people from all of these different backgrounds offering a bunch of different perspectives. And throughout the week, we ask the kids, what do you think? What do you like? Do you like creating the assets? Did you know that you could be a designer? Do you like picking the button placement and colors? That is, a potential career. It doesn't just have to be sitting in front of a computer writing code. Tech is really, really big, and there are a lot of things you can do if you want to.
One of the things that productivity in tech has been very, very, I will say, loose with is the term tech, because we've gotten people from, just YouTubers, people that were like productivity consultants, but they're in the tech space. And I think we had someone that like just flat out said like, I'm not in the tech space. And I was like, shut up. Yes, you are. And by the end of it, they're like, wow, I didn't realize how ingrained into the tech space that I actually am. And I think that's awesome, because people tend to pigeonhole themselves into, well, I like doing this one thing, but maybe that one thing doesn't pay well, or maybe that one thing doesn't, it's not as glamorous as people would think or would like. And if you just think outside the box a little bit, be creative, then maybe you can find a way to combine that with other interests that you have. And then you make that skill more valuable.
Yeah, exactly. We are currently in the United States and most of the developed world, we are a technical society. Tech is the backbone of, like most industries. I used to work in the healthcare industry in the IT department. If the IT department went down, if a server went down, the company went down. Tech is, I think, just so ingrained that, like you said, we just don't realize the extent to which we rely on it every day.
Absolutely. And one of the ways that we do that is with podcasting. Now, Aleen, you've been the host of a couple of podcasts at this point, right? Only two? Am I missing some?
Yeah, I'm thinking, hosting just the two. Yeah.
Okay. And you've been guests on countless others. What is it about podcasting that is just so magnetizing to you?
I don't know. I actually think about this a lot. I think it takes a certain personality type to get on a microphone and talk for, however long, 30 minutes to 2 hours. I think I like it because it's faster than writing. It is a much quicker way to get my thoughts out into the world. And it feels a little bit more ephemeral too. And I think I like that, sure, people will link to a podcast and bring some, mistaken thing I said up in 3 years maybe, but they're far less likely to do that than they will a blog post, which is Google indexed. And maybe that, maybe we're going to get indexing for podcasts as time goes on or whatever. I don't know. But I kind of like that ephemeral quality. I work from home. I have my business from home. My husband works from home. We live for a metro area, we live in a remote part of a metro area. We're not kind of in the city center. And our friends are all on the other side of the city. So podcasting and Twitter are also really great ways for me to talk to my friends on a regular basis so that we don't drift apart as much too.
I can definitely vouch for that, the latter part there. I used to be a co-host on a show that we did called Loosely Connected. And just due to some of the strain, some people got new jobs and people moved and like so many things were happening that we're like, hey, unfortunately, we can't do this anymore. And now it's like every Monday night when we used to have our calls, I would be like, man, I wish I was on the line right now. I wish I was doing those things. And we know that it's like, hey, one of these days we're going to bring it back. And, you hear that a lot with podcasts, and podcasts come and go. It happens. But, what is something that you would say to someone who had a podcast and maybe they didn't get the large network backing them, or maybe they couldn't find the advertisers? What would you say to them?
So that's a really interesting question because Less Than or Equal never got really big. I started it as an independent podcast. I approached the owners and proprietors of Relay FM about joining the network with it. At that point, I think when I joined, I had something like 60 episodes, and I only went to 100 episodes. And the audience never got really huge. I did get some sponsorships, but I think that was more because companies believed in what we were talking about, which was raising up marginalized voices in geeky spaces. So, and even Originality doesn't have like a huge audience. There are some shows, friends I have, acquaintances I have shows that get 100,000 downloads per episode. Originality is nowhere near that. I think that what I would say to people is, if you're going to start a podcast, you need to commit to, well, I mean, you don't need to commit, but if your goal is to grow an audience, and if you're going to start a podcast, you probably want to grow an audience, you need to show up, be consistent, and talk about something you really believe in. Because if you are talking about something you believe in with people you enjoy, that is the part that matters. If you're not having fun, people probably are not going to listen. You're not going to want to do it. And you're definitely not going to get sponsors if that reluctance is seeping through. So that is, if you want to start a podcast, make it a topic you want to talk about and do it with people you want to talk to. There aren't a lot of shows where it's just like one person talking. They do exist, but there aren't a whole lot of them. And there's a reason for that.
Those are usually like the heavy marketing into their own product shows.
Yeah, definitely. My husband did one very, very briefly called Value Berries. And it's pretty funny, actually. And all of the episodes are like 4 to 6 minutes long. Like it's a really short podcast, except one where he talked about printers. And I don't think it's safe for work. So if you're at work, like listening to this on speakers, or you're averse to swearing, you maybe don't want to listen to that one. But the episode on printers was like 16 minutes long. And it's pretty funny, but they're hard to do. They're really hard to do.
And I think that that micro form of content creation is starting to really become prevalent, especially with apps like Anchor now. And
yeah,
even like the micro blogging sphere is really big. Like I think of even Daring Fireball, like Gruber he writes these longer posts, but not very often. It's usually like, here are my thoughts about something else that someone wrote. And it's just like a quick thought, and then it's out there. And people tend to cling to that.
Well, I think that's why Twitter is so popular for certain groups of people, is it's like, I can get this out there and then I'm done. That's certainly why I like Twitter, is I'm not sitting down. Again, I'm not sitting down and spending 3 hours writing and editing a blog post. I spend 140 characters. I often let my typos fly, and it's done. It's gone. And then I'm moving on to the next thing. And, people don't have a lot of time. There are only so many podcasts you can listen to. And so figuring out, how does this fit into the world it's hard. It's hard to do. And it's I don't know. It's an interesting problem.
Speak for yourself on that one. I'm subscribed to like 250 podcasts at this point.
Don't you listen at something like 3 times speed, or?
Yeah, I'm trying to master like 2.2 at the moment.
Okay.
And like you said, it's a very like bite-sized chunks at a time. Get as much content as you can in this little window. And I mean, that's where the world is going. It's to me, it's unfortunate, because I think that there are so many great pieces of content that are long form that are best consumed like that. Like one of my favorite books, probably one of the most boring books you'll ever read in high school, Silas Marner. Like the first half of that book put me to sleep so many times, but I read it in 2 days, because the first day I struggled, the second day I couldn't put the book down. And there's something about reading still, and this is why I want to have, Tempest on the line sometime, even though she disagreed with me on some of my bullet journaling points, but that's okay. I haven't forgotten. I've internalized it, and I said, you know what? I am okay with our differences because she's still like one of the coolest people I know online.
She
So
really is. Well, life is boring if you agree with everybody on every point.
yes, absolutely. But having this small bite-sized formed content, aren't you afraid that podcasting is just kind of not suited for that?
I really think it depends upon the podcast. So I I think that podcasting's potential is still unrealized. Ooh, that sounded like really businessy. I don't like that. But I do. I think that podcasts, even though they aren't really a new medium, right? Podcasts have been around for what? Like some people were putting them up, 20 years ago. I don't know. Like they've been around for a while. And then the iPod, podcasting, the iPod came around and that kind of helped. But then the iPhone came and then it was like, oh my gosh, podcasting. And I think that it's something that people are just starting to realize exist outside of like niches. And I don't know. I don't know what the future of podcasting brings or will bring. I think that there is probably space for all kinds of stuff and there is space for a lot of experimentation. Not every show can be, the talk show running 2 or 3 hours. Not every show can be another podcast I listen to that's usually around 2 hours or an hour and a half to 2 hours, this accidental tech podcast. Like not every show can be that show. There are other shows that are 30 minutes long. A couple of tech podcasts I know of are 30 minutes or less every time. There are some like 20,000 Hertz, which is an amazing podcast about sound and sound design. That's usually under 20 minutes long. Welcome to Macintosh. There is about the history of kind of the Apple ecosystem. You can tell where I spend most of my time tech and Apple. But there are some episodes of that are like 5 or 6 minutes long. So I think that there's a lot of potential still that we're exploring and a lot of opportunity for education and storytelling that we just haven't figured out how we can harness podcasts to help us with those things.
I agree, and part of that scares me a little because I can only listen to so many Blue Apron and Casper mattress ad reels, at one time.
Squarespace.
Yeah, and Squarespace. And I heard, what was it? I can't remember the show even, but someone was revealing the actual like advertising dollars for podcasting in the United States, and it's still millions of dollars behind television and radio. Radio is actually almost higher than television. I was like, no one listens to radio anymore.
I don't remember the last time I intentionally listened to the radio.
I do, and it was when my phone was dead, and I took my charger out of the car, and I was just like, well, this is going to be upsetting. There's music I hear nowadays. I'm like, who is this? And like, oh yeah, they've been out for years. And I'm like, oh, I must be getting older.
Yep. Yeah, I have no idea either. Unfortunately, I used to really be into, music, and I'm not anymore. I'm basically turning into my mother, I think.
All right. So my next question is, what is the hardest lesson you've had to learn?
I have learned so many hard lessons. Setting aside my ego is the hardest thing I've ever had to learn. And it is an ongoing process. It is a continual thing. I think that Less Than or Equal really helped me with that because it helped me not only learn how to listen to people who are marginalized, so people who are underrepresented and who are underestimated in society. I learned how to listen to people who are marginalized in ways other than the ways I am marginalized. I'll put it that way. And change my behaviors based on that feedback without immediately becoming defensive. That has been an incredibly hard lesson to learn. And I am extremely grateful for the people who have been patient enough to stick with me through that process, even the times that they have smacked me upside the head, and who are still willing to call me their friends, because it wasn't easy for me, and I know it wasn't always easy for them, and I'm really I have a lot of gratitude for those people.
I love that answer. And I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up, because Aleen, you are definitely on your way to becoming a great advocate. Really quick, there's so many things. Please, before we get into the bonus round, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing.
All right. Well, so I am Aleen on Twitter. That's Aleen. I have a blog, a much neglected blog. You can find it AleenMean.com. Of course, App Launch Map is applaunchnmap.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter if you search for the hashtag Bujo with Aleen, which is my attempt to demystify the process of bullet journaling and show all of the awful handwriting errors that I make. And hey, look, there are no drawings in my bullet journal. It's literally lists. So you can always go to Instagram or Twitter and look for Bujo with Aleen, or for my really bad mistakes, hashtag draw a kitty on it.
You've been listening to the Productivity in Tech podcast. You can find this episode's show notes and more at productivityintech.com. Be sure to share this episode with your friends and rate and review the show on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you heard this episode. All of this helps to get the show in front of more people and help them become more productive. Also, if you would like to hear the full conversation, as well as join a community of people dedicated to becoming more productive with the help of daily peer-to-peer accountability, as well as unlimited access to the growing Pit library and many other special perks, then head over to productivityintech.com/join and sign up for your 7-day free trial of the Pit Premium membership. And a special thanks to Nadir Omawale for the use of his song Sanctified off his album Disordered Soul. Thank you for listening, and for the Productivity in Tech podcast, I'm Jay Miller, and I hope we've been productive.